Welcome, everybody, to episode 55 of the Serial Chillers podcast. I'm your host, Jesse. Today, we cover the most requested serial killer on the show. You guys have texted, you guys have messaged, you guys have emailed, you guys have let me know that you want to hear Gary Leon Ridgway. That's right, motherfuckers. Buckle up. It's time for Gary Ridgway. Across the internet in a bunker far away is co-host Greg, and across the internet as well, two great friends and great fans of the show who've made their way on, Nick and Geddy. Everybody sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 55 of the Serial Chillers podcast. Welcome to episode 55 of 1 million of the Serial Chillers podcast. Here from the Super Network studio, I'm here across the internet in his bunker with co-host Greg. What's happening, brah?
Sup, blood?
Oh, you know, chilling, illin' all day, every day.
And
two new guests to the show, not to our hearts. We've got fans that became, let's just say it now, guys, friends who are now on the show with us tonight. Welcome. I'm gonna introduce you guys as a pair. Geddy and Nick.
Hello.
Oh, I would have got Nick and Geddy.
Oh, okay. Well, see, I mean, they're left to right in my screen, so I just went in order. That wasn't to say that I like Geddy better than you, Nick. The one that gets my heart is the one that wins tonight. Yes, that's right. Tonight there is
That's
a
your
prize.
prize for tonight. There's finally a prize on this podcast.
I'm just kidding. I'm sure we'll all get along just fine. Well, you guys know how the show works. Let me explain it for anybody that doesn't. Each week I sit down with old friends, new friends, good friends, and bad friends to tell the story of an infamous serial killer. Throughout the show, you guys can chime in on my story. And if you brought a story of your own that is true crime, dark, creepy, unsolved, or otherwise mysterious, please feel free to share it. Lastly, if you have questions about questions, make sure to ask questions, because I cannot answer questions about questions if you never ask questions. Are there any questions?
Why do dogs have cold noses?
That's a good question.
I believe it has something to do with the regulation of body temperature. And welcome to and let's play the Serial Chillers podcast.
Feels good.
All right, you guys. I just want to start out before I tell you who the serial killer is this week. I will just tell you that it is the most requested serial killer to date for us. I've gotten more emails, Facebook messages, texts on the line about this one killer, and tonight he is here, so you guys know he's a popular one. Tonight's serial killer is Gary Leon Ridgway.
Ooh.
That's right, ladies and gents, we're going Gary Ridgway.
I'm honored.
Well,
Yeah,
hey,
that's a heavy drop.
I knew that you guys would appreciate this. I know that you'll also know this. Question number 1. In what year is Gary Ridgway born? Go all vocal answers tonight, guys. Don't worry about it. Throw them out there when you got them.
Shout them out. Let us hear it.
I'm going to go 1954.
Thinking 1947.
Ooh.
54 for Nick, 47 for Geddy. Geddy's going to get 250 points because Gary Ridgway is born February 18th, 1949. Almost some bonus points on that one. You were both in the wheelhouse, though. All right. So, February 18th, 1949, he is born in Salt Lake City, Utah, to Mary and Thomas Ridgway. He is the middle child of two brothers, Gregory and Thomas. His parents were apparently the classic antisocial people. They didn't really talk to the neighbors. They didn't invite anybody over. They didn't have a ton of friends. They just sort of stayed within the family. They had boys, you know. Why?
So they sound like the perfect neighbors.
Yeah. Why exactly? Why get friends? We've got these 3 young men we could hang out with. They're our sons. Sounds awful for the Ridgway boys.
Nah, I'm sure they'll
You
be
never
fine.
know. Oh, yeah, they probably enjoyed it.
Maybe.
Those turn out all
Maybe.
right.
Yeah, at least 2 of them will. So they're a classic antisocial family. Later, Gary's ex-wives will mostly speak in the negative about their parents, especially about his mother. His mother exhibited domineering attitudes toward her sons, especially Gary, for some reason, which caused frequent disagreements between the parents in their marriage. She once got so mad at her husband that she broke a plate over his head. That's right, a glass plate directly over the top of the head. Question number 2, what did his dad do when he got this plate broke over his head? Did he A, turn and slap her? B, nothing. C, straight up fist fought her? Or D, pushed her down and screamed?
I like to imagine the fist fighting like as more like a Mike Tyson's Punch Out type situation.
Just bring.
Yeah, you get to choose which one you want to be.
I've got the Rock'em Sock'em in my mind.
That's better. Let's
Yeah.
go with yours.
I'm going to take that option
Not
too,
bad.
because the Rock'em Sock'em is the only thing I got going on right now.
All right, Nick says fist fight. Getty says...
Well, I'm playing for love, so I'm going for B. Did
Getty
nothing.
says B, nothing.
Nada.
Playing for love. What a wonderful route to take on this episode. Because you're going to score points on that one. That's right. The plate smash over the head. His dad, a very calm man, said, "You know what? Ooh, okay. No worries, Mary. I'm fine. I'm gonna
Alright,
walk
boys,
this
eat
one
your
off.
veggies.
I want to walk this one off." So Getty takes an early 500-0 lead. No worries, Nick. Tonight you guys have 12 questions because
Okay.
Gary Ridgway is a fucking long story. So he doesn't retaliate. He just he stood up and he left the room. Gary was always closer to his mother than his father, even though she was a domineering force in his life. Another ex-wife once stated that his mother dressed inappropriately. She would dress in like very skimpy two pieces around like grandchildren. Do what you do and flaunt what you got, but maybe throw the swim robe on when the grandkids are around.
Yeah, get a shawl.
Right.
A nice classy shawl.
I like that. A nice, beautiful shawl, even if it's a little sheer. That's okay. At least you're making attempts.
Yeah, Komodo or something.
Yeah. So
I'm wearing a kimono. I'm chill.
Gary was a bedwetter throughout his early teen years, and Gary claims that his mother would often wash his genitals after he did this. So she would just like pull him out of fucking bed, throw his sheets in the washer, and get him in the bathroom and just scrub his fucking balls. Like, oh yeah, you just got piss all over you again, Gary, you piece of shit. And she would do that. She would berate him, and she would belittle him and just really fucking bring him down. I think he was 12 or 13 at this point. I'm not saying that he should have still been pissing the bed, but I'm not so sure that cleaning up his junk while you're berating him is the best way to send him into his formative sexual years.
I'm going to
Maybe
go
he was
out on
like
a limb
toddler.
and say he developed completely normal sexual urges after that. That didn't influence his sexuality at all.
Negative
Yeah, I like to figure
250
it's
points,
scrubbing.
Greg. Just a good.
Yeah, maybe he liked it. Maybe he enjoyed the time with
Maybe
his
not.
mother.
Well, that would maybe be part of the problem. It would definitely make sense for the way
Better than a
that
plate over the head.
it kind of makes sense because Gary is always kind of shown an attraction to his mother. We'll talk about that a little more. But Gary, going through school, was a very poor student. He suffered from a below average IQ of 80 to 82 and may have had dyslexia. Most of his teenage years were unremarkable until the age of 16 when he led a 6-year-old boy into the woods. Question number 3. What did he do to this 6-year-old boy in the woods? Did he A, kill him, B, rape him, C, beat him, or D, stab him? Kill him, rape him, beat him, or stab him. 6-year-old boy in the woods, Gary Ridgway, 16 years old.
I'm going to go D. Stabbed him.
Same Z's.
Double
D.
D
Oh yeah.
gets you both 250 points. Because
On
Gary,
the board. You're not blacking me out.
yep, Operation Don't
I
Get
would
Shut
never.
Out.
I don't want to. I have to.
Oh, wow. Well, too late. I stopped it.
So Gary leads this 6-year-old boy into the woods under the assumption that he was a friend and he was going to show him something, and stabs him through the ribs and into his liver. The boy said, and Gary confirmed later, that he told him I just wanted to see what it felt like to kill someone.
So fucked
The
up.
boy would survive, and Ridgway would walk away laughing. There are two versions of the story after this. One is that Gary could not ever be identified by the child, therefore he got away. The other is that he was identified, but police ignored it when the boy blamed Ridgway because Gary was just such a normal, well-behaved boy. He might have been a little dumb, but he wasn't going to go out stabbing someone. So they said, listen, 6-year-old who got stabbed in the liver, you're a fucking liar.
You little shit.
Yeah. So one of those two things happened, whether he just was never identified or he was, and no one believed the kid. Either way, Gary Ridgway would get away with stabbing the 6-year-old in the liver at 16 years old. In June of 1969, he's now 20. He's going to graduate from Tyee High School. He gets held back twice. That low IQ, low motivation, and the possible dyslexia gets him out of high school at the age of 20. So he's not ahead of the curve here, guys. We're working with a gentleman. Let's just say.
Damn, one more year and I would have been able to buy beer for my graduation party.
For my 2 friends.
June
Yeah,
2nd.
too.
Well, they
I
weren't
think
alive.
so.
They weren't
He had
alive.
3, but he stabbed one.
June 2nd, 1969, he's hired as an hourly employee at the truck maker Kenworth. He did very meticulous taping jobs for the custom paint jobs on the giant big rig trucks. So apparently he was fucking kick ass at he was the pinstriper, you know? He went in and did the fine taping before the paints, and everybody said that he was very weird and he was very quiet, and he just stayed to himself and handled his job at the Kenworth plant, and that's what they all say when somebody ends up being a serial killer. Oh, he was so quiet and gentle. So he's just a few months into the job. Vietnam is kind of running its course. Some people around him are being drafted. Gary says, fuck it. I'm going to go ahead and just join the military. Sign up before I get drafted and plucked out of nowhere. Question number 4. What branch of the military will Gary join? No multiple choice on this one. Only so many of these.
Just I think it's
The
just
Salvation
regular,
Army.
Yeah, I think it's just the regular army, isn't it? Whatever infantry or whatever it's called.
I don't know. Is it?
I don't know. I'll mix it up. I'll say Navy.
Geddy says the Navy. Nick says the Army. Gary Ridgway joined the Navy.
Oh, shit.
Geddy
Geddy's whooping
yet
me.
to miss one. Up 1,000 to 250. Really, as they say, stunting on him. What do you say? What do you say?
It's the corn cob pipe.
Yeah.
Gotta be.
That's the captain's hat. It's the Navy.
It's the Navy.
Yeah,
That's
I know
right.
all.
Very nautical.
Attaboy, Captain.
Way to stay in theme. I appreciate that. So in 19
Something told me to throw it on.
exactly, and you're up 1,000 to 250 because of it. Plenty of time, Nick. Plenty of time.
I'm
Don't
coming
worry.
back.
You
I
gotta
believe in you, buddy.
you gotta play a little defense and keep those hands up. Just look alive, Nick.
Come on, man. Unhitch that trailer.
Get the let out. We've got a lot of these colloquialisms if you want them. In 1969, again, a lot of young men are being drafted into Vietnam, so he decides to join the Navy rather than get drafted. He also marries his first steady girlfriend, Claudia Barrows, after just a few months in the Navy. Ridgway had an insatiable sex drive and spent a lot of time with sex workers during his time in the military in both Vietnam and the Philippines. He contracted gonorrhea, and although it angered him, he did not, of course, why would you, stop having unprotected sex with prostitutes in the Philippines.
No, you got it.
Yeah. I mean, it's already done, right? I might as well spread it while I'm here.
Well, that's what I was going to
You
say.
live it
You've
up.
already got it. I mean,
Right. So
we're going to get it again.
his
Gotta get it and go.
his new wife, Claudia Barrow, is alone at 19 years old at home without her new husband, who is overseas. She begins dating other people while Ridgway is on active duty, and in less than a year, the marriage has ended. Poor simple Gary has already ran through one marriage. 1971, he's 22 years old. He is discharged from the Navy after his service was complete. So mission accomplished. He went in, did 2.5 years, and he got out. He avoided getting drafted randomly, and apparently he did see some time in Vietnam where he saw battle. Apparently, it's something that Gary Ridgway does not talk about. There's no real records. It's just been corroborated that he was, in fact, in the heart of Vietnam and actually did some shit while he was there. So this definitely didn't help, anything, because he was thrown into battle and I don't think he quite expected that. And there was another thing I missed from his childhood. His dad was a bus driver, but he kind of moonlighted and part-timed as a mortician. And he used to tell a lot of stories to young Gary about his coworkers and colleagues and the necrophilia that took place in the normal bedtime stories you tell your young son.
I was going to say that's what you choose to discuss with your children.
Yeah, it's sort of bizarre, but nothing about the Ridgway family seems incredibly normal. So, we take.
Well, I guess we really can't blame the dad, though. He did have a plate smashed on his head.
Yeah,
he took it too.
Yeah,
Got some wires crossed.
Maybe that was his revenge.
Maybe.
Well, he'll take it out in dead bodies later.
Yeah.
He's like, smash a plate on my head, will ya?
So, married, divorced, in and out of the Navy, Philippines, Vietnam, active duty, all in it. January 14th, 1972. He's been back a little while. The divorce with Claudia Barros is made official. In 1973, he meets and marries Marcia Winslow, and Ridgway after they got married, had a son named Matthew. Gary never really seemed to be fully attached or love his son, but he did seem to be jealous and angry that Marcia needed to spend time with the kid more than Gary, because Gary demanded sex twice a day, up to 6 times a day. She needed to be readily available for anything he wanted, sexual or non-sexual, making dinner, giving him rides. She was a servant to him, and he sort of resented his child, I think, for taking that away from him. So, real rational thought, I guess, is what I'm saying. Yeah, there are stories where he talks about, using the picture of his son to kind of lull women into a sense of security. And I believe there's one story where he actually used his son, and his son waited in the car while he went.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, he took her out, and then he told her. And then
And-
when the kid was like, "Hey, where's that lady at?" He's like, "Oh, she lived down the road."
Yeah, she took off. And they asked, and I believe later they asked him, like, what if your son had seen something? They said, well, I would have killed him too.
Yeah.
So, Gary Ridgway, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't think he was the only serial killer to use pictures of their kids in his wallet, though. It's like when he's pulling out the money to pay him or whatever, he's like, "I've got a kid, I'm a good guy."
This definitely didn't come with this wallet.
Not at all. Not a stock photo.
Sir, that just says Getty Images across the bottom. Yeah, no, come on, let's keep it moving here. What are you, the picture investigator?
He's sponsored. Real good kid.
Okay, let's see here. So as well as being sort of a servant, he also needed her to be a servant to God. He was very, religious fanatic is probably a good word for it. He went door to door.
Man of the Lord.
He was a man of the Lord. He went door to door preaching the word of the Bible on his own, like as not really a part of any program or anything like that.
He went door to door looking for potential victims.
Perhaps.
So just remember that when people come to your door and try to sell you stuff or tell you about Jesus, they're probably there to murder you later.
Yeah, I mean,
just scoping out the house.
I think Gary Ridgway was more into people of the night, street walkers, as it were, not people who were established in homes. But you never know. It's early.
I hire hookers to answer my door. You not?
The only reason.
So he begins reading the Bible aloud at work and at home, and insisting that Marcia followed the strict preachings of their church pastor. Also, during this time, Ridgway wanted Marcia to participate in having sex outdoors and in inappropriate places, and he insisted on having sex several times per day. He also continued to pay sex workers throughout their marriage. So he has a insatiable appetite when it comes to sex. Like he's got his wife agreeing to have sex with him multiple times a day, and he's still like, yeah, but she sleeps sometimes, and what am I supposed to do then? So
Got to go to bed
What about
for
when she's taking care of that damn kid?
yeah. So he's going to continue to pay the sex workers. Marcia struggled accepting Ridgway's relationship with his mother, who controlled their spending and made final decisions on any of their large purchases. Gary was never really good with his money, and so Mary sort of took that and ran with it. She always sort of ran his finances for him. So his mother, even at what is he now, close to 30. His mother is running his finances. She's, he's married, and the wife has less say than the mother does in the large purchases that take place in the family. So Marcia's got a hard time with that. She went as far as, the mother went as far as buying Ridgway's clothing to make sure that it fit properly. She also accused Marcia of not properly taking care of their son, Mary's grandson, and Marcia obviously always resents this. Knowing Ridgway would never defend her, Marcia was left on her own to try to control her domineering mother-in-law. Marcia, who suffered from a serious weight problem most of her life, decided to have gastric bypass surgery in the late 1970s and quickly lost weight, and for the first time in her life, she thought that men found her more attractive. This made Ridgway jealous and insecure, and the couple began constantly fighting and eventually decided to divorce. Later, Marcia claims that Ridgway at one point placed her in a chokehold during one of their fights. So this is one of my favorite Gary Ridgway stories. He and Marcia are out one night, and she gets out, she's driving, and Gary's in the passenger seat, and she gets out and then walking up from the driveway to her house, and all of a sudden someone's choking her from behind, and she's like, what? And she didn't think that it was Gary at first, but she struggles for a second, and then all of a sudden the hand lets go. And then she can hear feet steps running completely around their van, and Gary pops out from the front of the van like, what's going on? What just happened? What happened? So I think
I chased that dude off.
Yeah, he's definitely testing some waters, but it's
You're so lucky I showed up when I did.
Right. Yeah. That's almost exactly what she said it was like.
You need me now. You owe me.
Yeah.
Now we have to have sex 12 times a day.
You're welcome.
So
you can no longer take care of our kid either.
I'm calling my
He'll
mom.
figure it out. You can scrub his own junk.
On July 17th, 1980, Marcia files a complaint with Kent Police Department where she claimed Ridgway was harassing her over the phone about divorce papers. She reported Ridgway said that he was going to get a gun and blow her new boyfriend's head off. July 20th, 1980, he gets into a physical fight with Marcia. Both have always been known to have tempers, but nothing normally ever came of it. Apparently, this time they squared up and threw hands. But, of course, nothing comes of this either. The next day, July 21st, he is accused of choking a sex worker, Rebecca Gray. She was able to escape his grasp and inform authorities. May 1981, he meets a new girlfriend at Parents Without Partners meeting. So that's nice. That sounds like a nice little organization, just helping some single parents find some like-minded individuals to join forces and perhaps raise their children together while looking forward to a wonderful life.
Beautiful.
But unfortunately, Gary Ridgway was involved. So, yes. He meets this new girlfriend, and they have their first sexual encounter that night in an army bunker at Fort Casey that they snuck into. Why, I do not know. He occasionally ties her up for sex, and this is something that he really enjoys. Total control.
How do you sneak into an army base?
Yeah,
Seriously, kind of want to know.
I asked Gary Ridgway, man.
I mean, maybe in the 70s, right in the 70s now, maybe it was just lighter security back then.
That's true.
In the
It's
70s, it was pre 9/11.
true.
Exactly.
I mean, but like Pendleton now, if you ever drive down to Pendleton, you cannot get in there. It's crazy. But maybe in the 70s, they weren't as hardcore about it.
Well,
Thanks,
I mean, yeah,
Dick
they got.
Cheney. Now I
They
can't
got
have
some
sex in
crazy
an
security.
army bunker.
Snuck into an army bunker to have sex for the first time. He occasionally ties her up, enjoying that. Total control. On May 21st, 1981, he is officially now divorced from Marcia Winslow. Single and ready to mingle, he already has been. Late 1981, Another girlfriend asks him to move out of her home after he's only been there for about a week, presumably seeing a lot more of what Gary was like.
Smart.
So he didn't waste any time. Got in there and just really started fucking it up for himself. So Gary's pretty phenomenal at that. In December of 1981, he meets another girlfriend through Parents Without Partners. She said she has low self-esteem and was unable to please his mother with her actions. So, can't pass the mom test. What are you going to do?
I know this dude and his mom, she buys his clothes,
Yep. On December 4th.
We gotta have that junk room.
On December 4th, 1981, he comes to a Parents Without Partners social function at around 11 p.m. as it's wrapping up. He seems upset and tells his current girlfriend that he nearly killed a woman who may be a sex worker. Later, most of his girlfriends state that he would often demand sex 2 or 3 times a day, and a few of them mention being choked as well. So we're just kind of setting it up here. Like he hasn't killed anybody. He stabbed a 6-year-old, but this is just his.
Who hasn't?
This is just
He was a crazy teenager.
Yeah, he's 33
simpler
now.
time.
He's 33. So
He's 33. Sorry.
Gary Ridgway, there's like so much to unpack because he's in a way like very secretive and a very like withholding, but then at the same time, like he's going to admit to, it'll probably be a question later, so we won't throw the number out there, but he's very forthcoming with some information, and then it's other information. They ask him questions. I watched some interviews where he's in a room with like a psychologist who's kind of leading him down the line, trying to get him to say some things, it seemed like to me. And he would literally just stutter for like a minute and a half until the psychologist would just finally say like, "Oh, you mean this, right, Gary?" And he'd be like, "Oh, yeah. So they'd ask a question, and Gary Ridgway would say, "Well, you
Very gumpy, man.
It's very
He's very gumpy.
What did he say? He has an IQ of what, 80,
80,
89?
80 to 82. Yeah, very low IQ.
Yeah, so I don't expect him to be, off the cuff and very casual about stuff.
It's true, but he's not a vegetable.
No, I'm not saying
gumpy.
that, but I would feel like that he would have to have something prepared. So if they're asking him, a bunch of questions and he's very forthcoming with a bunch of information, and all of a sudden he's not, he's either stalling and trying to lie, or he's trying to come up with something that give you what you want to hear, because it's not what happened. And if you said they're leading him down the line and trying to leading him on and they're walking him into questions and stuff like that, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, where were you during the investigation, bro?
In his bunker.
Playing video
Army
games.
bunker.
Yeah, looking for an army bunker to have sex in.
And potentially take over as your own?
Yeah, it's like House Hunters.
Yeah.
You got to start small.
The Bunker Busters.
Police see him parked near a Little League baseball field with Kelly McGinnis, an 18-year-old sex worker. Ridgway is able to talk himself out of the situation. Police officers note
Shocking.
that he and Kelly McGinnis are in the vehicle. Later, Kelly would be the victim, one victim of Gary Ridgway. So, 1982, later that year, the first victims turn up near the banks of the Green River, south of Seattle. Others were found near ravines, airports, and freeways. Many of the victims have ties to sex work, drugs, and street life. Many of them were last seen in what was called the SeaTac Strip near the airport between SeaTac, Washington, and Seattle, where there are many bars, dance clubs, and street life. So, some shit's going to get wild. Let's take a little break. Going to come back. I think Geddy's got a little story for us. And we're going to, like I said, it's going to get fucking wild. Come back or I'll kill you.
And you'll make sure you change my voice? Yeah, I would appreciate that. No, thank you. Okay, just say it. Right into this mic? Okay, you're listening to the Serial Chillers podcast. Back to the show. Is that it?
All right, let's do this thing again. All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope that break was as good for you as it was for us, because it was really good for us. So yeah, everybody feel good? You guys feel good over
You're
there?
the best.
Whew. Whew. So we're gonna take a little Gary Ridgway break
Thank God.
because our good friend Geddy has brought a story, and we're very, very excited to hear it. So without further ado, Geddy.
Ayo.
I get it.
Yeah. Hey. So I'm gonna try this out. I haven't written a report in many, many years, and so sitting down and actually writing this out was really weird. But I'm gonna be telling the story of Nathan Gale, and if you guys didn't do your homework, he's the dude that killed Dimebag Darrell back in 2004.
Rest in peace.
So
Before you keep going, I just
Awesome.
want to go on record saying Vinnie Paul died last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and when that happened, I was talking to my cousin, and I was like, "Dude, I really want to do the guy who killed Dimebag Darrell on this podcast." So, because I have no follow through, I am super excited for you to do this.
Well, then I hope I can meet your expectations because this idea came up like the same way because I was talking about how, hey, it's cool that he got to just pass peacefully, and then I was like, at least he didn't get gunned down like his brother did, and then my coworker was like, yeah, that dude was crazy, man, and I'll get into how exactly he was crazy because I didn't believe it at first. So December 8, 2004, we're at the Al Rosa Villa in Columbus, Ohio, and so Dimebag's new band, Damage Plan, with him and his brother, had just started their set when a 25-year-old Nathan Gale storms the stage, brandishing a 9mm Beretta. Sorry about that, dog barking. Quiet. So this bastard Nathan Gale, he had opened fire. He had stormed the stage. He came up and he opened fire on Abbott. He shot him 5 times, and it was confirmed that the 3rd shot hit him in the head, killing him instantly. And at the time when all this was going on, when people saw him run up and they started hearing gunshots and stuff, they kind of weren't sure if it was just a stage ploy or they didn't know what the hell was going on. They just thought it was, metal as fuck. And then they saw Abbott hit the floor, and then they realized that something was going on, and it created a mass hysteria. So everyone's running everywhere, trying to figure out. A couple fans had rushed the stage to either subdue Gale or to administer aid to Dimebag. Where are we? There was a fan whose name was Nathan Bray, and he was attempting to give CPR to Abbott when he was shot and killed by Gale. And then Mindy Reese, she ran up on stage, and she was a registered nurse, and she attempted to give CPR until the paramedics arrived. But as soon as they did, Abbott was pronounced dead, along with 4 others, including Gale. Luckily, Gale had been shot in the head by an officer, James Neigemeyer, after he had taken a drum technician named John Brooks hostage. And so this police officer showed up on the scene. He was holding a 12-gauge shotgun, had a clear shot, and blew this dude's head off. Like, literally. They said the 9, so it was a buckshot, and there was like 9 out of 10 had hit him in the head, and it just disintegrated. And it it gave this officer like PTSD, and he went through the trial about if the actions he had taken had made sense, and everyone voted in favor that, like, if he hadn't done something, way more people would have been killed, because Gale killed 3 people, he died, and then he injured 7 others when everyone was trying to help him. And so I didn't really get too much into Nathan Gale's like upbringing or anything. He went to high school, played football. Everyone thought he was really weird. He just liked to party and stuff. And he used to do a lot of crazy shit for like attention. And
He's like Steve-O.
Everyone do what?
He's like Steve-O.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, he did it for acceptance and shit, and but other than that, no one really gave a shit, And he joins the military, and he gets discharged within a year, and they couldn't release exactly why, but his mother had gone on record to say that it was from mental health issues, so they let him go. He was too crazy to be a Marine, which is out of this world, But in my notes, I went on to why. Why did this happen? And there's a whole shit ton of theories that I've always heard about why this dude had done this. And the first one, obviously, was everyone said, oh, it's because Pantera broke up. and it was his favorite band. And it really was his favorite band. This dude would listen to a Vulgar Display of Power on repeat for hours, and he would just listen to it and absorb it and feel this connection to this band. Which,
To be fair, that is a great album.
it's a great album. It's been playing in my car for over a year.
It's easy there.
I got an agenda. All right, I got stuff to do. I feel a personal connection, but like I just never took it out of my CD player. And so I just like, all right, what are you gonna do? I'm lazy. But and so the first story, the first theory was that Pantera broke up, and so he wanted to, avenge Pantera.
Man, they can for sure never have even a reunion tour if you kill one of them.
Yeah.
Garbage. It's selfish.
Yes.
It's selfish, man. It's very selfish, and so I got on mental health reasons. His mother came out and said that he was diagnosed with a paranoid schizophrenia. So this dude's already got this problem. He's obsessed with this band. They break up, rips his head, and I'm not saying that all paranoid schizophrenics are gonna kill.
Right.
They're not all out to like hurt anyone. They're just paranoid schizophrenics, But in Gale's certain hallucinations, they led him to believe that. And this is what got me to this story. Was my coworker had dropped this bomb on me. He's like, "Yeah, dude, that guy killed because he thought that Pantera was stealing his songs, and so he wanted to get revenge." And I was like, "That's stupid. I've never heard of that before." But after, looking into it, this dude legitimately was telling people like, "Hey, listen to this song. These guys stole my song. I have it written down right here." But the thing is he would listen to this album over and over and over, write down these lyrics, and then he'd be like, "Oh, hey, I came up with this. Like, they stole these songs." And I've also read on a couple websites that he thought all the dudes were like laughing at him. So he had this strong connection to this band, but they also hated him. So even people he didn't know didn't like him. And so Pantera breaks up. Damage.
He couldn't even get imaginary friends.
No. He couldn't even in his paranoid delusions, like this band was making fun of him.
That totally sounds like the paranoid schizophrenia, though, like the made up connection to the band, I wouldn't say made up, but like the made up friendship with the band, and the delusions of, I did this and now they're doing it. Why are they taking my ideas? Like,
yeah, now they're getting the glory.
Yeah, like that's totally that totally sounds like paranoid schizophrenia. Like,
yeah, so it's like you dig more into this dude, and it's dude was sick, man. And then he had to take down all these people with him. And so basically, just in my conclusion, where it's just it finally snapped. He locked in his fate as a certified fuckface by taking away a guitar great. Because of those people that don't even know what we're talking about, Dimebag Darrell fucking wailed, man. To people that don't listen to Pantera or just like fucking ripping guitar solos, man. Dimebag was a legend.
Greg, drop like a 10-second clip here we won't get sued for.
You just want me to get the...
Or like the Cemetery Gates, just that... But yeah, he was just taken way too soon. He was, got it written down somewhere. He was only 38 years old.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And, and another thing, and so the night that they were playing in this dumpy little shack. It was 250 people that were there. Tickets were $8.
Damn. Didn't the guy just like, there was like no security, so he just walked backstage too? Wasn't there like an issue with that came up later?
Well, there was security because one of the dudes that he killed was one of the tour security, and his name was Jeff Mayhem Thompson. And so there was security. So he was standing out front, and he was just like hanging out, and he was harassing the bus for a while. And he was like, "Hey, is Dime or Vinny in there?" And they're like, "No, like they went inside." And he was like, "Oh shit!" And he's standing out front, and he's like chain smoking, and these people are like, "Hey, dude, like why don't you go inside? Like it's cold out here, and there's like some fucking music." And he's like, "Dude, I don't want to see no shitty local bands, like." Because this dude had an agenda. He wasn't there to see a show,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he's just hanging out outside, and then he hears Damage Plan start to play. There was like a security gate that he hops over, and he like goes in through the side entrance, and then he just rushed the stage. And so it was said in a couple reports that there were people that saw him, but they were like, oh, he's probably just going to stage dive, you know? He's just gonna, you know, he just wants to fucking stage dive.
Right.
Because
then he
it's a
got up
metal
on
show. That's
stage.
what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. So no one's like, hey, what's that guy doing? And it was this dumpy little club, like, you know. They're just like,
So
all right, we got people in.
I looked up
Sorry to
Jeff
that
Mayhem
Ambrosia
Thompson.
via. Yeah.
Dude, this guy's gnarly looking.
Is he like Mayhem incarnate?
He looks like it. The picture I found is a friend posted of him, and this dude's wearing a kilt and like a pirate shirt and big old Doc Martin boots, and it looks like he's in the you know, those Scottish games where they like huck telephone poles.
Oh yeah, so he's got no sleeves.
No, he's got sleeves.
Oh, what?
He's got pirate shirt on.
He's
Fucking
ready
sleeves.
he's ready to bust out of him though.
Oh, like a pirate shirt. But I don't
Yeah.
want to be a pirate.
I don't
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah, he's a big fucking dude.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, everyone was trying to take this dude down, but obviously he had this agenda, and they said it was super creepy because he wasn't saying anything. He was just unloading. He when he shot the dude that was given CPR, which was what was his name? Bray. Yeah, Nathan Bray. He had shot that dude, realized his clip was empty, calmly reloaded it back up, and just kept shooting. And at one point, the only thing that he really said, like he got his glasses knocked off like by someone, and he just pointed the gun at him, and he was like, "Help me find these glasses."
Oh my god.
And then that's when he started to like lose control. The cop like snuck up on him from the other side of the stage, took the hostage. Luckily, that dude just kind of like juked a little bit. Cop took the shot, and like I said, vaporized his head.
Yeah. Wow. Jesus.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, that's
So I wish I could have gotten more on this, but I just had the basic outline just because.
that was good.
Like I was saying,
I
man,
can't
I
even
didn't-
imagine the chaos of being in there.
Yeah.
Sounds awful.
Sounds very awful. I didn't man, I guess I didn't realize how long ago it was. It feels like it was like so recently.
2004. I was a young lad.
Yeah.
14 years ago, wow.
Man.
I was but a young lad. I don't even think I'd found Pantera really by that time.
See, that just goes to show that if he did kill him because they had broke up, it didn't matter, man. The music lives on forever.
Yeah, it's so true.
Forever. You piece
I mean,
of
the
shit.
guy had mental issue problems. I think that was like the bigger thing.
That's definitely it. I'm just projecting my own insecurities by making fun of that guy. I think that's really what's happening here, Nick.
That's why we're all here, I thought.
Wait, this isn't the self-help group.
Yeah, this is actually just
This isn't parents helping parents.
I haven't been recording at all. We're just here for therapy.
This is parents without parents.
So back to the heartwarming story of Gary Leon Ridgway.
Hold on, before you actually get back to that, I want to say good job, Geddy. You did a good job with that.
Yep.
Thanks, dude.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, good job, Geddy. Proper.
Yeah.
Let me give you one of these too. Yeah, that's how you know it's
yeah.
the real fucking deal right there.
All right.
So, Gary Ridgway. Okay, that was heavy too because like I think it seems that we all had a pretty like I won't even claim to be a giant Pantera fan, but I know of, can respect and do like Pantera, and I think it seems like the four of us all kind of had the music connection, like to make that story, you know, it hurt a lot for all of us. So it was we're getting into Gary Ridgway, which is heavy and hurts a lot, but that story carried a lot of weight, Geddy. So thanks, man.
Thanks for making me feel.
Yeah.
Let's take another break.
You guys remember feelings, right? So if you guys remember, Gary has victims are starting to turn up. The first victims that are found are two young boys are out riding a bike. I think they're 7 years old, and they ride over a bridge and they see a body caught in debris under the bridge floating in water. So that's the first body found. The very next day, I think, a kayaker is like going down the river and he sees what he believes to be a mannequin floating in the water. And as he gets closer, he realizes that there's two, and they're actually human corpses floating in the water, and they've been weighed down by boulders. So essentially he could see from like the waist up. of these two women. So the police are called out on that, and when the police are coming down, they're kind of like cordoning off the area, and as the main detective, I think his name's Frank Reichert, comes down, he nearly steps on a third body on the way down. So he's just walking down to check out these two bodies he just heard about, and nearly steps on a third body that hadn't been discovered yet. So this is initially a dump site right off the bat. So in 1982, 16 women would go missing, and the remains of 6 of them would be found. January of 82 to August of 89. Let me just say right here that we would be here for a 4-hour episode if I covered, even in very short detail, every murder that's going to take place. So you will hear me mention very few of them, some of the more pivotal ones, and then at the end, I'm sure you guys will indulge me. I'm just going to go ahead and give a list of all the victims, because I don't like to forget the victims, and I don't want to not list them. So I'm just going to wrap off 48 names for you dudes. And let's see, January of 82 to August of 89, a lot of shit is going to pop off. Gary's going to live at 21859 32nd in SeaTac, Washington, about 3 miles from where the first victims were found in the Green River. January of 1982, he meets a future girlfriend at another Parents Without Partners dance at Normandy Park. In April of 1982, he's arrested during a prostitution sting on the airport strip. Gary would be found guilty. So he's got a house. He's renting it. He's renting a house. He's trying to figure out where he's going to go with his life. The cash flow is kind of getting a little low. He needs a way to make a little more. So question number 5, how does he make a little more? Does he begin to rob some of his victims? Starts to steal from family? Does he drive a taxi at night? Or rent a portion of his home to another couple? Begins to rob victims, starts to steal from family, drives a taxi at night, or rents a portion of his home to another couple.
Shit.
Geddy, you go first. Me going first is losing me this game so far.
I don't know, man. I haven't heard any of these things. Oh, man. I'll do the obvious and say he's robbing his victims.
I'm going to go moves in a couple to the house.
Nick says moves a couple in. Well, Gary's got this nice house. He can't afford it. I think the MO change doesn't work for him. Sorry, Geddy. He does move a couple into his house and lives into a converted part of his garage. So, 250 points, Nick. It's now 500 to 1,000.
All right. Don't raise your glass at me.
Still a game.
Take a long, slow sip.
Still a game.
I'm pretty sure they could just call that a victory sip.
Yeah, so a couple moves. It's like when
Just don't you dare wink.
it's like when defenders teams in football that are down like 21-0, and they get a sack and they get up and they dance for like 14 seconds. You're like, but wait though, you're losing a lot. Plenty of time. It's okay. It's like doing that in the first quarter right now, Nick. You're like, hey, we're a second half team. We got this. So
Now you gotta dance.
So
Dancing.
he moves a couple into his house in SeaTac to help pay the bills. He lives in the garage that was converted into a living area. The woman who moved in says he was rarely home at night, and they thought that was weird. He was out doing some serial killer shit. May 11th, 1982, he is arrested for agreeing to an act of sex for money with an undercover King County police officer. At this time, he is driving a maroon-colored 1975 Dodge truck. This truck will be the truck. May 1982, the third girlfriend in his line of Parents Without Partners girlfriends breaks off the relationship after the second girlfriend tells her that he gave her herpes. So, Gary Ridgway, man. Yeah. It was around.
So did his gonorrhea just evolve, or does he have both?
It sounds like a both situation.
My boyfriend went to Vietnam, and all I got was these stupid herpes gonorrhea.
Wait, can't you cure gonorrhea?
I've never had to
I
look into
can't.
it.
I'm not a scientist.
So in May of 82, he gets the relationship broke up because of the herpes that he provided the second girlfriend. The third girlfriend did not want to get. It was around the middle of July 1982 when the first body was found in the floating in the Green River. We talked about that. She was 16-year-old Wendy Lee Caulfield, a troubled teen who had experienced few joys in life before she was strangled to death with her own panties and tossed like garbage into the shallow edge of the river. That's Gary's MO, is that this was, if you watch the interviews with him, if you watch his court trial, these women were garbage and he tossed them aside. And the reason the number is what the number is because there are women that he's like, I don't remember. I can't really recall. Oh, her, I don't know. She doesn't look that familiar. You know, he committed so many murders that
Just all starts to blend together.
right. He some of them he's like, I don't know. Here's some bodies. You tell me. So
There's low IQ played into that as well. You know, you're just like too dumb to remember some of them. Maybe.
that's not. Yeah, I don't think it's impossible because, it's rough. That's a lot
Yeah,
of.
it's all pretty rough.
It's a lot of people to remember after only knowing them for a very short time.
Yeah. True.
So Wendy Caulfield is one of those. So this one, it might be obvious, it might not be. I feel like I should always include it when it's a slightly famous name. Question number 6. At this point, the killer receives a nickname. No bonus points tonight because this one is very obvious. I think if you don't get it, it's okay. You know, it's okay. This is the one. This is the one. Is it A, the King County Killer? B, the SeaTac Strip Killer? C, the Riverbank Killer? Or D, the Green River Killer?
D.
Yeah, it's for sure D.
It is for sure D. Congratulations on your 250 each, guys. I figured that would be the question where if someone was getting shut out up to this point, they would for sure, you know, they'd get their 250.
And then get that 14-second dance.
You know, we
That's
got to.
That's what we in the business call a gimme.
We don't want to see anyone fail. Doesn't put asses in the seats when the scoreboard reads 0.
It's true.
All right, we're halfway through the questions.
It really be like that sometimes.
Without much evidence to go on, Wendy Caulfield's murder remains unsolved, and the person responsible was dubbed the Green River Killer. Sex workers and runaways begin to disappear at an alarming rate. The King County Police Department had no way of knowing that Caulfield represented the beginning of the savage killing spree that would last for several years. With the majority of the murders occurring from 1982 to 1984, most of the victims were sex workers and young runaways who worked and hitchhiked along the SeaTac Highway, which had regressed into being 2-lane strip of topless bars and cheap hotels. We all know those areas.
It's rad.
We've seen those areas. For the Green River Killer, this area proved to be an exceptional hunting ground. And that is kind of exactly what he fucking did. He hunted.
Yep.
Reports of women and young girls disappearing continued, and discovering some of their skeletal remains clustered together in wooded areas along the Green River around the SeaTac Airport was also becoming a far too regular of an occurrence. The victims ranged in ages from 12 to 31. Most had been left nude, sometimes with their fingernails clipped and their bodies cleaned. The areas where the bodies were left were sometimes littered with gum, cigarette butts, food, and road maps. Now, these weren't necessarily Gary's himself. I think he liked to do it in areas where there was other people's things.
Yeah, all kinds of DNA all over.
Right. I mean, at this point, DNA wasn't a big thing. It was known, but it wasn't.
Refined.
Yes, right, exactly.
Wasn't he known to like litter the crime scenes with like cigarette butts and gum though too, like from trash cans?
Yeah, that's what I think is his idea.
So they would think it was a smoker.
Right.
Like, fucking
Yeah.
Yes, and he did. There's one specifically we'll talk about later where he does some extra weird shit with the fish and some ground beef. The
Haven't
area.
we all?
Yeah, right. Some of the dead bodies.
This is me. This is me now.
Some of the dead bodies had been sexually abused, and the Green River Task Force was formed to investigate the murders. and the list of possible suspects grew. So, when the task force is created, initially, question number 7, how many detectives were on the Green River Task Force? This one is just throw your number out. How many full-time detectives were a member of the Green River Task Force? You nail it, you get 1,000.
Ooh.
I feel like I know this, and I just can't like pull the number out of my head.
I'll just pull it out of my ass. 7.
I'm gonna go 13.
Ooh.
7 from
Try
Geddy,
8.
13 from Nick. With the bodies turning up and the murders happening what seems to be very often, initially, the Green River Task Force will contain 32 full-time detectives. Yeah, this is going to be its high point. This was a fucking huge task force.
Yeah.
They also, not to get too sidetracked, had some badass green jackets with Green River Task Force in yellow on the back, which I just personally kind of enjoyed. So their jackets were clean, their name pretty on the nose. It was no Central Indiana Multi-Agency Investigative Team, but you know,
great it wasn't.
We'll give them a pass because those jackets were dope.
Yeah.
DNA and sophisticated.
I want one right now.
Dude, I honestly Googled it, and for people for sure have recreated it. So I am not the first one to think that jacket was tight. I wish I were though. DNA and sophisticated.
Sick breaker.
Yeah, exactly. DNA and sophisticated computer systems were not around during the 1980s. The task force had to rely on old-fashioned police work to piece together clues to profile the killer. So it's kind of weird to think about. I feel like you guys are part of it too. Is in the generation that had the internet and did not have the internet.
Yeah.
There was a time where we were like, "Whoa, what is that sound?" You've got mail. Yeah, exactly. There was
now
a
kids just call it Skrillex.
Yeah.
Too much.
So
sorry.
It's a good old fashioned task force. They're out, feet on the ground. That's why, I think task force can be smaller now. I think 7 and 13 would be gigantic task force today because you can cover so much ground now without ever leaving an office. 32 full-time detectives was like, it was probably like 4 hours of Geddy on Facebook can cover what 32 detectives were able to figure out in a day,
No, I'd just be sharing memes, man. I do nothing productive with it. But I guess so low because of the less dead.
Yeah.
I thought like even 7 would be big because they're like, dude, who cares? Like it's a 12-year-old prostitute. Like
I think it was the fact that they were finding body dumps, that they weren't finding like one here and one there and going, well, could these be connected? It was like, oh, we found another group of 3. Here, there's 2. Oh shit, here's 2. Here's another 3. And they're like, all right, fuck, what are we gonna do?
wait a second.
That's rough.
Yeah, and that's 1982, remember. So December 3rd of 82, Rebecca Marrero is 20. She is last seen leaving SeaTac Motel, but isn't reported missing until July 20th of 1984. She'll never be seen alive again. August 16th, after the bodies of 4 more young women are found in or near the Green River, King County Police set up the biggest police task force since the Ted Bundy murders of the 1970s. April 30th, 1983, that's the Green River Task Force. April 30th, 1983, the first apparent police attention to Gary Ridgway occurs when victim Marie Malvar disappears. Her boyfriend follows a pickup suspected in the disappearance. So Marie Malvar was a sex worker, and her boyfriend usually just sort of was nearby to make sure she was good. This is fairly regular occurrence in the industry. Have been made to understand. So he's nearby just to keep an eye out, and this truck takes off and sort of loses him. So at this point, the boyfriend is now just kind of looking for this truck in the area. He can't find it, and so for a little while, he's looking and decides, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to go get her dad. and he goes to Marie's house and gets her father, and they go and drive around looking for the truck together. They are driving through some neighborhoods, and by chance, they happen to see the truck parked in a driveway, and the pickup is identified as Gary Ridgway's. Police contact Gary Ridgway, and he denies any contact with Malvar. There is no proof of anything. Therefore, Gary Ridgway is let go, and there is no charges to be filed. This is going to be very regular for Gary Ridgway. May 3rd, 1983, Carol Ann Christensen disappears. Just 5 days later, police discover her body. It is found in a totem-like display with strategically placed fish and fresh ground beef in her hands. She's like this. So he's like,
messy, so vogue.
it's incredibly bizarre to think about. And I think it's just like you guys were talking about with cigarette butts. Is his way to be like, man, I need to change this shit up a little bit, right? They've got to be onto me.
Yeah, it's the old ground beef fish trick.
Right.
Yeah, what was he thinking? I don't get that one.
Yeah.
I get the cigarette butts and like chewed gum he would leave, but he's just like,
Who knows?
maybe he couldn't find a full trash can. Or it's like, I'm just going to go to the grocery store and get some.
I think there are a lot of serial killers who want to be caught, you know. I don't think Gary Ridgway was one of them.
No, neither do I.
I think that, you know, he was very good at what he did, and he needed it. You know, we're talking about a guy who had a wife who was willing to provide him sex 2 to 6 times a day, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to get out and get a little more, though, pay for it. It's fine if I have to do that. He had an insatiable urge, and it only made it better when he was able to exhibit violence during that. So this guy is pretty unstoppable at this point, and I think he recognizes that shit is kind of closing in around him, so he's like, man, well, I still have to do it. Yeah, so it just bizarre. During his next 8 months, something like another 25 women will go missing. Ridgway's name keeps coming up, but he keeps working his way out of it. In May of 84, he contacts the Green River Task Force because he hears that they're looking for him, so he reaches out to them, ostensibly to offer some information to help clear his own name. He takes and passes a polygraph examination that they ask him to take. So while he may be sick, psychopathy might be one of the things that he was sick with, because I think he's going to take 2 more that they are like, yeah, good, man, he's good. It's good. Gary Ridgway's good. Let him go. So it seems to me that from the very beginning, he was on the radar, but always kind of moving off of it, and then back onto it, and then off of it, and then back onto it. And then, so
It's crazy, man. All you got to do is just look at his beady eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The BDI mustache combo is very strong with Gary Ridgway.
But it's a common
Crazy.
theme with like heavy hitting serial killers. So like, you know, Gacy and Dahmer both had run-ins with the cops several times.
Yeah, and I think it may enable them a little. They feel like they're invincible.
Yeah, I think at a point though, it's also what gets them caught, because they get to that point where they do think they're invincible. And that's when they start making mistakes. Like, what's the quote you guys always love with Ted Bundy?
The tire iron.
Yeah. Like this is the same concept. When you know, Ridgway is sitting there dumping bodies everywhere, taking these polygraphs and passing them, and all of a sudden he's just like, he starts to get a little sloppy.
Exactly.
Yeah, because he's not thinking of them as like people. So it's not like, did you kill this girl? He couldn't give a shit. It's like, did you get rid of that garbage? Oh, yeah. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Was this your fish?
So
Was this your fish?
he passes this polygraph examination. It's now December of 1984. The death toll has reached an estimated 42. January of 85, something happens. It starts in October of 83 when a special consultant wants to help on the case. Question number 8. Who? Is it A, Ted Bundy?
If I take a stab, can I get 1,000 points?
This one's
I
not
want a stab
stabbable.
too.
It's not a stabbable one.
Damn
Sorry.
it.
Is it A, Ted Bundy? B, FBI profiler Rob Ressler? C, America's Most Wanted host John Walsh? Or D, Kenneth Bianchi, one of the Hillside Stranglers?
I'm going A.
I wish it was John Walsh because he's such a strapping man, but it's our boy Bundy.
Yeah.
So as early as October 1983, Ted Bundy did indeed begin reaching out to the Green River Task Force And finally, in January of 1985, they said, fuck it, let's go see what he's got to say. So 2 detectives will fly out to Florida. Ted Bundy is sitting on death row. This was most likely a ploy to stay his execution for a little while longer. He would not be executed much longer after this. He offered to help the task force find the killer. Lead detectives obviously declined initially, but they go out in January. They meet with Bundy, who gives some insight into the mind of a serial killer. He kept referring to the killer as the Riverman. And he had some you can hear these
They already
clips.
had a name, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah, but what I think is that, and this is one of the theories too, is that pretty much everything Ted is saying, he's already done.
Yeah.
So he's saying like, hey, like the Riverman would probably be doing this, but it's really just like, hey, one time I went out and I did this. So you guys might want to look for some shit like this.
Well, they
I'm
share
just
a lot
saying.
of the same
I know
stuff,
a guy.
Yes,
didn't
they do. And a big part of it was Ted Bundy committed most of his murders in Florida, but he's from Seattle.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm real familiar with the area. I know that I can really help you guys on this case. So very Buffalo Bill of him.
As an investigator, though, could you imagine how desperate you have to be to fly out of state to talk to another killer?
Well, and that's what I mean. I bet they first got it and were like, yeah, this fucking asshole Bundy trying to fucking whatever, fuck this guy. Yeah. And then, we're 16 months into the case and they're no closer to a killer. And they're like, oh, fuck, whatever. We've already spent $1.7 million on this investigation. What's, $400 for tickets to Florida to go talk to this asshole before he gets killed.
They send all 32 of them out.
We all might see something the other one doesn't. 64 eyes is better than 2.
Damn it, where's your jacket? You can't go on the trip if you don't have your jacket.
My mom didn't sign my permission slip. Damn it! I knew this would happen. So, yeah, they go out there. Bundy puts a lot of significance into the different areas of the bodies had been left, suggesting that each cluster was a spot closer to the killer's home. He said that the killer was smart and able to adapt, but specified that he was not smart like a human, but smart like a fox in the way that it can adapt and be a predator. Bundy also tells police that their best bet is to find a fresh grave site and don't start investigating, but to stake it out, because this guy's for sure returning to the scene, the Riverman. They would never find a fresh grave site, and while they found Bundy's insight interesting, it did not directly help in any way. So we'll take one more short break here. Co-host Greg is going to tell us a short story. Yeah, right. We got a bunker tale tonight. That's what we start calling them. So we'll take another break. We'll come back with a bunker tale, and we'll finish up with Gary Ridgway, and we'll all go home and sleep wonderfully tonight, I'm sure.
No, I'm going out tonight.
Yeah, come back or we'll kill you again. Hey guys, you were just listening to me, but it's me again. I'm just here to reiterate the Patreon. Patreon is really great because you can give as little as $1 a month to it, and you help the show keep moving forward in a way that is potentially great for you and me, because I won't have to work a regular job, and you guys get a better, more often podcast. Win-win if you ask me. So patreon.com/serialchillerspodcast is where you can do it. We appreciate everybody that has done it. We just gave away $100 based on Patreon donations. So we're trying to give back whenever we can. So thank you everybody who has given. Thank you everybody who's thinking about giving. It's patreon.com/serialchillerspodcast. Enjoy the rest of the show. Welcome back, everybody, to episode 55 of the Serial Chillers Cast. We're going Gary Ridgway here. We're having some fun trying to. We got to find the silver lining sometime. We're gonna step away from Ridgway for a moment because we have, I like the name. I know I made it up, and I don't mean to give myself credit, but Greg, give us another bunker tale.
This is the Phoenix Lights. This has actually happened far away from the bunker, in a little town known as Phoenix, Arizona. It was March 13th, 1997, and about 8:15 p.m. It was, fairly dark. It's early spring. It's fairly dark at 8:15. A guy, I forget the cat's name, but he called the police department in Phoenix and Prescott. There it is. So around 8:15, this guy called in to the Prescott Police Department in Arizona and was like, "Hey man, there's like a handful of lights in a V formation hovering above my house." And it just made like an arbitrary right turn and then kind of slowly started heading away. And the police were like, "You're fucking crazy, guy. Whatever." I mean, nobody else called in anything. Nobody said anything. Nobody saw anything. Then about 8:45, quite a ways away in Phoenix, people noticed the V formation of lights flying slowly over the city. And then that one was reported. I mean, people's phones, they lit up the police for that one. And it was roughly 20,000 people saw it, reported it, recorded it, took photos, took videos. So that's one of the biggest mass sightings in the history of sightings.
So let me ask you this before we go any farther into your story. You're always telling me about these experiments where they possibly dose the water supply or something like that. So tell me that
the old MK Ultra.
Yeah, tell me that there's some type of connected story like that where they weren't seeing shit. They were all tripping the fuck out on the LSD we synthesized into the water system.
I would say no, unless they had a way to suggest the same vision to everybody.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
They're beaming it into their brains.
Yeah, I mean, unless
Group
and I'm not going to say that's not a possibility. I know the HARP weapon exists.
They were just stringing lights out, and when you're just all tripping, your mind just takes the strings away,
Well, so what the official report was that it was flares from an AC-130, like from a nearby Air Force base,
like anti-missile flares,
the distraction flares that they burst off, like in that one really badass picture, and it looks like wings and shit. It's really fucking cool. But if you notice, when you see those flares, there's usually smoke following them, a trail of some sort,
and they're just going down.
Yeah, these didn't have a trail. They were and those flares they burn out after a while. They fall down to the ground and they burn out. Somebody did the math, and to go from fucking Prescott, Arizona at 8:15 and be in Phoenix at 8:45, these flares had to be traveling roughly 400 miles an hour. I don't think you're going to get that kind of longevity out of a flare.
Right.
And you'd see the trail for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that thing would just be booking.
Yeah.
And so I don't buy into that. And they said that they said it was actually two separate events. The one in Prescott and the one in Phoenix.
Who is they?
Well, the official reports like this. So get this: the governor of Arizona. This guy's a dickhead for this. I'm big on disinformation. I fucking hate that shit. And people purposely publishing false newspaper reports and trying to discredit other people and all that stuff. Just let the information be. So this governor, he held a press conference after people were freaking out about the Phoenix lights, and he had an aide dress up like an alien in like a Mylar suit with the big fake rubber hands and a head and everything. And he brought this cat out in the middle of the press conference, like handcuffed, and they're like, "Don't worry, we got the guy responsible for the lights in the sky." And everybody was just like, some people were like, "Ah ha ha, that's funny. Take that, space nerds." And other people were like, "Dude, that's not funny at all. Like, people, like 20,000 people saw this shit. You just made fun of 20,000 people, 20,000 of your constituents."
And then some people were like, "Yes, they fucking got him. Yes."
Right. Well, yeah. And then, those guys.
You're like, "See, Barbara, I told you."
Those are the guys who tweet in all caps too. But Like 10 years later, that same governor, so like 2007, that governor was like, yeah, no, I totally saw it. And as an Air Force fighter pilot and stuff like that, it was nothing I've ever seen on this planet before. And as soon as he said that, my first thought was, go fuck yourself. Yeah. Because you didn't see shit. If you saw shit and you really thought that, you would have been right there with everybody else being like, hey man, we want fucking answers.
Right.
And he was like, well, they were interviewing him and he was like, oh yeah, well, I requested from, the government and requested flight patterns and stuff like that. And he didn't get anywhere. Everybody actually waited too long because the FAA only keeps radar transcripts and stuff like that for 11 days, which seems like a totally obscure amount of time
and very short.
It seems like whoever requested it 12 days. And they're like, oh, yeah, we only keep them for 11 days.
Damn.
Crazy.
So
how long ago was that?
That was 1997.
11 days.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So that was, that was kind of that's the thick and veiny of the Phoenix Lights.
Yeah.
I totally encourage people doing their own research because I don't want to tell anybody what to think. But if you want me to tell you what you think, fucking aliens are real. That may or may not have been them, but aliens are totally fucking statistically real. And if that freaks you out, fucking good.
You should be freaked out, bro.
Yeah, fight me.
We gotta get these aliens in handcuffs, man. Yeah. Our suits.
See, I mean,
well, what I'm thinking is, so that same dude was like, oh no, that was a bunch of tests, and then later he's like, no, I saw it too. I think he just wanted to look like, no, I have the answers.
I think he's a disinformation agent. He immediately came out and was like, ho, got you guys with the aid dressed like an alien. And then 10 years later, people are still harping on it. They're like, dude, this shit still happens. And he's like, I totally believe you. Let's see what we can find out together. I'd be like, get the fuck out of my camp, guy. You don't get any of my information. You got to go out there and do your own fucking homework. He's the guy that shows up in the group project all late.
Yeah, it's like, look what we did, you guys.
Yeah, I'll present it. Fuck you will.
He just wants, when it's proven legitimately real, he just wants to be like, I knew it. Told you.
Yeah. I just had to do that because of my job at the time.
Yeah. Guys, the tie is off. I'm ready to party.
Yeah.
Phoenix Lights wild, man. Thank you, Greg. Give you one of these. With one of these.
There you go. Yeah, the proof is out there. Keep watching the skis.
Keep watching the skis.
It's true, man. I want to believe.
Yes. I do believe. I don't get that. I want to believe. I do want to believe.
Like, I want to see it, man. I'm looking at the sky all the time.
It's like God, Greg. Something. Let's like a little proof. What's that so hard? That's not so much to ask.
Yeah, where's the Mylar suit?
Look up pictures of Valiant Thor, my guy.
Yeah, Valiant Thor is a little scary.
That was crazy.
He was there.
Greg has some selfies with him. We'll shoot some over.
I want that on a shirt.
So let's jump back into our friend Gary Ridgway. If we'll remember, the Green River Task Force has just broken down, flown to Florida, and taken a 2-day interview with Ted Bundy to see if they can't gain a little bit of insight on what this killer might be like. Later, they're going to come back and they're going to look into some of the other people that they had kind of seen before. They asked Gary Ridgway to take yet another lie detector test, and yet again he passes. October 17th, 1986, Patricia Michelle Barzak disappears. February 7th, 1987, Roberta Joseph Hayes also disappears. Later in 1987, the leadership...
Time travelers are real.
Yes. The leadership of the task force changed hands, as did the direction of how the investigation was conducted. Instead of trying to prove who the serial killer was, the task force took their list of suspects and worked on trying to identify who the killer was not. Initially, a lot of focus came onto a man named Melvin Foster, a 63-year-old retired taxi driver and ambulance medic. He became the focus of the Green River Killings investigation. If you guys go and look up some videos, this guy's fucking weird. And I could totally see why, even just by meeting him, you might think he was the Green River Killer. In September of 1982, Foster contacted police about the first killings, thinking that it might be another taxi driver that he knew. Police started to get to know him because he had been saying, hey, this guy I work with, I think he might be good for him. Police are starting to see some of the weird things he's got going on, and they start to believe that maybe, in fact, he is the Green River Killer. So, police started to have a tail on him almost at all times. He was a taxi driver on the SeaTac Strip, and he knew 5 of the victims so far. A quote from him says, "I've never made a secret of having been acquainted with a few of them. Cab drivers meet the seedy side of life if you drive around town." So, you know,
I want to talk with this guy.
right. I think he's still
He
around,
waxed
man.
poetic, man.
Yeah. There's one scene where
He
he's
speaks
like
in riddles, I bet.
he speaks like
He's
like
picking
I
his
am
words very carefully. He's
like-
guilty of something.
like
he may
I-
not be the Green River Killer,
yes,
but
he's guilty of being a douche for sure. He speaks like anybody on the subreddit I am very badass. Like there's one interview where somebody walks up and just says, "Are you the Green River Killer or what?" And he says, or no, they say, did you kill those girls or what? And he says, "No, but I wish I did. I wish I did know who did it." Like that's the stutter he gives into it. But his first answer is, "I wish I did. I wish I did know who did it because I'd put a stop to them." So he's like, I don't know. It's just so bizarre to me. So, police thought Foster fit the FBI's psychological profile for the killer and put him on 24-hour surveillance for months and searched his house in Lacey, Washington twice. Adamant about his innocence, he had heated arguments with Frank Reichert, then the county's lead detective on the case. In October, he called reporters and proclaimed his innocence and said the police were harassing him. He publicly demanded police to, quote, "lay an egg or get off the nest. I knew that the DNA evidence was coming. I knew that science was going to get there." So DNA evidence is starting to come into the crime a little bit and start to play a difference. And I think this DNA evidence ends up clearing Foster in the end. Let's see here. He was not concerned with being investigated again once he is cleared for the crimes. In August, he did volunteer his DNA, and it did not match with any DNA evidence they had on file. So I want to say it was like 6 or 8 months. This guy was like, people were like, this is the guy. He is going to be arrested any day now. This is going to be the Green River Killer. And he's just some weird guy, like in interviews, he'd be like, "I am not a religious fanatic, but I am my brother's keeper. And when the time comes that I must step in and protect my brother, I will be my brother's keeper." And like,
was he cleaning a gun?
like this is
Real slow, just wiping it.
This is how
Talking in circles like that. It's like a Charlie Manson kind of vibe to it.
he almost kind of has that too, because he's never like quite looking at you. He's looking past you.
Well, I'm thinking of Leonard from like Full Metal Jacket.
Thought. It's the disconnected string of thoughts. Like they start going one way and they think it's going to sound better, so they just kind of trail off and go another direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, Melvin Foster was a huge part of the investigation early. They thought he was the man, and he wasn't. DNA evidence.
Well, I mean, it's understandable. His name's Melvin.
Yeah, spelled with a Y
Melvin,
too.
if you're Melvin, someone's gonna look at you.
MELVYN.
Wow.
Yep.
His parents naming them that. His parents must have hated him.
It was a different time.
Don't try to church it up, boy. So back to the newly ran task force and eliminating suspects. Those who could not be eliminated were moved up to the A-list. One of the members of the A-list was Gary Ridgway. He had landed initially on the suspect list because of the 2 encounters he had with the police in the early 1980s, and that he owned a pickup similar to that involved in the crimes. In 1980, he was accused of choking a sex worker while having sex with her near his truck in the SeaTac airport, which was an area where most of the victims would be found. Question number 9. When questioned about choking the sex worker, what did Gary Ridgway say to police? Did he say, A, he was not there; B, he was there, but he didn't choke her; C, he choked her, but it was in self-defense; or D, he choked her, but it was consensual?
Damn it.
So I wasn't even
I know
there.
which one I hope it is.
I wasn't even there. I was there, but I did not choke her. I choked her in self-defense, or I choked her, but she was down.
They're all so good. Like every one of those answers, it's like, fuck.
I was hoping it would have been like, did anyone ask where Melvin was?
Nobody asks where Melvin is.
That's the
Melvin.
problem.
He was keeping his brother, dude. Because when he's not a religious man, but his brother keeper, dude. Saying B.
You're going B. I'm gonna go D. Consensual.
So Geddy says B, he was there, but he didn't choke her. And Nick says D, he choked her, but it was consensual. Nobody's scoring points on this one because Gary Ridgway admitted to choking her, but it was more in self-defense because she had bit him while performing oral sex.
Fuck.
Yeah.
I think I knew that too.
Yeah. So she did some biting. He wasn't a fan of.
Did he prove it?
How much teeth do you want?
Nothing.
You know when you're
but.
shaving down a carrot into a baby carrot?
I like grazing.
All right. Let's see. Our score now is Nick 1250.
Ooh.
Geddy 1500. Nick closing the gap, my dude.
Coming for you, Geddy.
So
Gross.
The beatings will continue.
That's right.
Unless morale improves.
all right.
Then
So
morale improves.
oh, hey.
Never forget it.
That life.
So Gary Ridgway believed that while he was with this sex worker and she bit him while performing oral sex, that choking her would be an act of self-defense. I guess it worked because somehow the matter is dropped. April 7th, 1987. They are still unable to eliminate Ridgway as a suspect. He moves officially to the A list and was placed under constant police surveillance. The investigators scrutinized his work record and determined that he was never at work on the days that many of the victims had been reported missing. Also, sex workers along the strip had given police the description of a man who has been seen cruising the area, which matched Ridgway and his vehicle. This was also the road that Ridgway used to go to and from work. On April 8th, the whole time he's holding down that sweet-ass job at the Kenmore Truck Factory, doing his paintings.
Apparently it was really good.
Yeah, he was. And it fucking weird, too. All of his coworkers he didn't really talk. He just came here and he just did his job and he left.
Like, I know we touched
Like
on that
everyone wants
earlier.
a.
Yeah, didn't he get into actually painting murals on the side of the trucks too? Like it was it started off as just striping and edging, and then he just expanded
exactly.
and all of a sudden
because I think
I can just hear him now. Damn it, Gary. They said they wanted it blue. They didn't want a fucking wolf howling at the moon.
Yeah, but this wizard's so badass.
Yeah, so he's been at
He's
this.
like, Jesus Christ, it's the 80s.
He's been at this job nearly 20 years. So yeah, absolutely. He has worked up through his paint skills, and he's now I guess head painter, badass Gary Ridgway. Yeah, that's
man.
Give him the official title.
Everyone wants a pogo by Gacy. You know, myself included.
Yeah.
I really want a car detailed by Ridgway, dude. That'd be sick.
There it is. So everybody can send that to Geddy. All right.
If you're not going to get his car detailed by Gary Ridgway, then you at least need to go out and kill a bunch of people and then detail his car.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just 1.6 drive, dude.
So the never-ending list of no way it's a coincidence, circumstantial evidence against Gary Ridgway does get the police a search warrant. And on April 8th, 1987, the police searched Ridgway's home meticulously. It was tightly packed with objects he and his fiancée had collected from dumpster diving, attending swap meets, and from dump sites where some of the Green River victims had been found. So it's a hoarder house, is what it really sounds like. But they like to have garage sales. It was kind of their shit. And a lot of his neighbors talked about how he would sell a lot of women's jewelry that his wife was like, well, it's not mine. Gary got this. And shoes and some clothing. And if you'll remember, all of his victims were found nude. So There's a fairly decent chance if you lived in Washington at the time and shopped at any of Gary Ridgway's garage sales and purchased some women's clothing or jewelry, you may have purchased some of his trophies he took from some of his victims and been wearing it unknowingly.
Fucking send it.
So think about that, you 1987 garage sailors. All right, think real hard about where you were.
The list of hobbies for Ridgway though is the craziest thing: painting trucks,
And
yard selling, and killing hookers. He's so fucking random.
He definitely puts
Not
the
to mention
last one at the
sex.
top
There was
of the
a lot of
list.
sex.
Yeah, a lot of sex.
That's right.
And fish and ground beef.
So while they're searching his home, he's taken into police custody where he passes yet again another polygraph test. He agreed to let them take hair samples, and he chewed on a piece of gauze for them so that they could get some saliva DNA. He was released for lack of evidence, and believing he had once again fooled the Green River Task Force, Ridgway's confidence was riding high, and he would soon be back on the prowl. So it's just like we fucking said. This guy just keeps going in.
He's unstoppable.
Yeah, he's ungoddamn stoppable. That's why he's prolific. We all know.
Yeah.
Ridgway began dating several women he met at Parents Without Partners functions. It's all he's doing. So he meets Judith Mawson. Judith found Ridgway to be gentle, responsible, and a structured man. She appreciated that he had worked at his job as a truck painter for over 15 years. To Judith, Gary Ridgway was the perfect mate. Before moving in together, Ridgway went to the trouble to update the house, including replacing the carpet, perhaps necessarily. Unlike Marcia, Judith praised her mother-in-law, Mary, for helping Ridgway handle things that were difficult for him, like his checking account and major purchases. So she's a fucking enabler. Eventually, Judith took over those responsibilities for Gary, filling the shoes where Mary could not, as she was now aging. They would be married all the way until the evidence begins to come out against Gary. March 5th, 1990, Marta Reeves disappears. Later in 1990, the Green River Task Force is completely disbanded due to no progress being made and the fact that the budget had been over $1.5 million.
Did they get to keep the jackets though?
I hope so. It sort of seems like it was an election year. Like it was an election year in 1990 around Seattle, and they were like, ugh. None of the politicians wanted to keep this task force going. It's a big, at this point, a big mar on the budget, and they said shut it down. So they shut the task force down, and it's now just one detective working on the case. It seemed at this time Gary's relationship with Judith has a few close calls, and he's slow. He's had a few close calls with the run-in. Judith is kind of setting him straight. It seems like. It leads to the shutdown of the task force and Gary really slowing everything down. In January of 1998, he may have got a hunger because Patricia Yellowrobe disappears. And in 2000, Linda Blaney, a coworker at the Kenworth truck plant, thought he was a nice person until he nearly ran her down with his pickup, and he laughed at her panic. So... he apparently he was joking the whole time, but he kind of ran her down in the parking lot, and she thought it was very fucking serious. And he got out, just hand on stomach, just bent over laughing.
Such a goof.
Such a goof.
Just new boot goofing.
Holy hell, you should have seen how scared you were.
Not everybody gets that style of sense of humor,
Yeah, it's very rare.
Yeah, all my friends laugh when I try to run them down with my car. As long as you get out laughing,
I've got a great friend who every time I see him, he pulls a gun on me, and we just laugh and laugh.
It's like when you send an insulting text, but you end it with LOL. It makes it all right.
Yeah,
that's why all my texts are in haha.
Yeah.
I mean, no one takes me seriously.
So the Patricia Yellowrobe disappearance stirs up a little bit of questions, and I think some people got the ball rolling. 3 years later, 2001, 11 years after it's initially shut down, the Green River Task Force was brought back. However, DNA technology has progressed, and the sample taken years ago was preserved correctly. So this sample is over 20 years old at this point. The task force is now made up with younger detectives, many of whom had been teenagers or younger when the killings had first began. This group now, obviously 2001, has computers and technology on their side, which help create profiles based on sporadic evidence. They also had the advantage of DNA research, which had advanced considerably over the last 15 years. The DNA evidence, which had been carefully taken care of and preserved by the last task force from Ridgway, was invaluable in getting the evidence that was finally needed to capture and convict the Green River Killer. Gary will be arrested in November. For what will he be arrested? This is 2001. Will it be peeping, stalking, assault, or Gary being Gary again, prostitution charges? Peeping, stalking, assault, or prostitution charges in November of 2001.
What was the third one again?
Assault. We've got 3 questions to go and a 250-point game.
Shit.
I'm gonna go prostitution. It just seems
I'm
line
falling
up
for the
with it.
setup as well. D.
you just don't. Making sure I can't win is what you're doing.
I'm not that smart, Nick.
I'd like to wager it all.
You guys are both going to score points on this one because Gary is just being Gary. And on
Geddy's just being Geddy right now.
November 16th, 2001, at 52 years old, Gary Ridgway is arrested on loitering for prostitution charges. November 27th, he pleads guilty to the charges, and on November 30th, 2001, Gary Ridgway was arrested for the 20-year-old murders of Marcia Chapman, Opal Mills, Cynthia Hines, and Carol Ann Christensen. This evidence was positive DNA match from which each victim to Gary Ridgway. So all of these DNA matches, they've been chilling. They've had this evidence that they knew one day they'd have the technology for. They preserved it correctly, and they could now connect it all to Gary Ridgway. The detectives said when they did the DNA test that they brought it in, like the lab brings it in, and the both of them are standing there. And the younger detective says to Frank Reichert, like, we have it right here. And he says, before you even open it, I already know what it says. It's going to say Gary Ridgway. And sure as shit, they open it, and the DNA results come back positive Gary Ridgway. Technology!
Right?
Yep. So the evidence was the DNA. Later, paint samples also match up to paint spray used at the Kenworth plant. So they have his overalls that they'd collected like 15 years prior that they took from his locker at the Kenworth plant. And they had some particles expert take it and prove that they could have only been these paint chips that they found near and on victims could have only been these exact paint chips that were only for commercial use by the Kenworth company during these, some crazy forensic shit, but exactly to be. And the reason they went in and got all this was because it's 2001. The O.J. Simpson trial kind of soured the criminal defense system on DNA. I think it confused some jurors then. And so the DA was like, this DNA evidence is not enough. Like, we need something else. And so they went out and found the paint chip evidence as a little bit more. He interviewed, Reichert interviews Ridgway's ex-wives and old girlfriends. They discover Ridgway had taken one girlfriend for picnics and outdoor sex in various areas that he had used to cluster the bodies of his victims. So everywhere she described that they go to go have their outdoor sex, to go kind of have their picnics, these end up being, like, you could put pins on them as the dump sites where the bodies of Gary Ridgway's victims will be.
He was sitting there
Savage.
going out with his girlfriends having outdoor sex and like thinking about the body buried 15 feet away.
Right. Or the one he's going to bury 15 feet away. I think it might have been
it's
before.
creepy.
Yeah, either way. Exactly.
That's how he made it
and he's just-
inconspicuous when he was out there scouting sites. What are you out here
Right.
doing? Not looking for a place to dump a dead body? I'm just banging this chick.
Yeah, exactly.
Never go alone.
He's like, here, babe, hold this fish and this ground beef.
and do this. Look like the scales of justice.
You can just hold them up like, wow.
So I call this section Plea Bargain Gary. Gary Ridgway knew that he'd be facing execution, but he did not want to die. I mean, why would he deserve to die? So in a plea bargain attempt, he agreed to fully cooperate with the investigation into the remaining Green River murders. For months, detectives methodically interviewed Ridgway, getting details of each of the murders he committed. This interview setup was crazy. They had like this bed in this back of a cell and then this interview room. So every night Gary would go sleep in there. They would come in and they would interview him for like 8 or 10 hours. Jesus. And then he would go back and sleep. And for months they did this. Like they just got his childhood, his life. Gary Ridgway just told all the stories that he wanted to tell, and they just took in as much information as they could. So they found out that they found out locations where he left several of the bodies, and he disclosed how he killed each one, and the evidence he left to throw off police, the cigarette butts and the trash and the gum. Ridgway's preferred method of murder was strangulation. In the beginning, he used a chokehold from behind. Then he would later use a ruler to twist fabric around the necks of his victim, kind of Gacy-like. Sometimes he killed his victims inside his home. Other times he would kill them in the woods. In one revealing confession, which showed the deepest of Ridgway's darkest side, he said that he would use a picture of his son to help gain the trust of his victims. He also admitted to killing one of his victims while his young son waited in the truck. So we talked about that a little earlier. When asked if he would have killed his son if he had realized what was going on, Gary said emphatically, yes. In the released videotapes of Ridgway detailing the murders to investigators, he confessed once to killing 61 women and then another time to killing 71. I might have given you guys the answer already, but if you remember, you're going to score points. At the conclusion of the interviews, how many can Gary recall and how many can they substantiate?
No, we're stabbing it.
Two different answers?
No. Same one. This is how many they're gonna. This is their official number once they've finished with this set of interviews. He said 71. He said 61. He's kind of got some stories. They've taken all the stories. They've taken all the evidence. They're putting it together and they're saying like, this is the official number we've got.
Well, shit, we've had two different numbers. They're sticking in my head.
So it's gonna be 500. 500 if you nail it, or 250 to the closest.
I'll say 48.
That was where I was going. That's what I remember.
Double 48s?
Yep.
Means double 500s.
Damn you, Geddy.
Right. I answered first, so you felt better.
Yeah, I know.
So
I lured you in.
we do have one question left. Geddy does continue to carry a 250-point lead. It's not over. We could end in another tie and another over the internet artistic challenge. We're going to figure it out. We're going to figure it out, guys. Who knows? So I don't even remember what question 12 is either. So get at me.
We all fab.
Oh, here's a fun fact. There's 13 questions and I misnumbered them. There's 2 questions left.
Ooh, I could win this right out.
It could be a victory. That does happen sometimes here on the Serial Chillers podcast.
People are biting their nails at home.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so Ridgway could only recall and have substantiated 48 of his claimed 71 at this time, all of which he said occurred inside King County, Washington. Yeah, he's blurred on the other possible 23. His wife at this point. But
it's also, since it's substantiated, like, it just shows that he's not a serial confessor, because I hate serial confessors.
Right, we did Dale Anderson. He's very Henry Lee Lucas.
Like Otis, Otis Toole and stuff. It's like,
yep.
Pee-wee, what was that killer's name?
Pee-wee Gaskins.
Pee-wee Gaskins.
Yep.
Yeah, he was another one that said he killed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think they could only confirm like 10, and he said he killed like 60 people.
Yeah,
he's such a tiny little adorable man.
One every 2 weeks or like one every month.
Coastal killing or whatever it was. Anyways.
Ridgway recalls 48. They substantiate 48. His wife at this point becomes very distant. I wonder why. So in late of 2002, Gary files for divorce. In prison for 48 murders, and his wife's being distant. He's like, you know what? I'd like to file for divorce. June 2.
I deserve better. If you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best.
June 2003, 54-year-old Gary Ridgway is released from the ultra security unit of the county jail in downtown Seattle to the sheriff's office. And on August 16, 2003, kind of in between his actions here, the remains of Patty Arnett, a vent, are found off the Highway 410 near Enumclaw, nearly 20 years after his disappearance. So people are starting to turn up because of the information that Gary's putting out there. August 21st, 2003, a bone fragment is found on a steep hillside just off of the Des Moines Road in Kent. A total of 19 bones are found, but DNA tests fail to link some of the remains to a known Green River victim. August 30th through September 2nd, the remains of April Dawn Buttram are found in Snoqualmie, just off of Interstate 90. September 28, 2003, the remains of Mary Malcar are found in a steep ravine in Auburn West Hill. On November 2nd, Gary Ridgway pleads guilty to 48 charges of aggravated first-degree murder. He also confessed to moving body parts to Oregon to throw off the investigation. So they're just taking him out, and he's like, just dig here. And they're like, oh, shit, we just found 19 odd bones that are 20 years old. So yeah, it's fucked, man. It's fucked.
That was nice of them, though.
Yeah, to at least
Closure.
give some
You could've been like, no,
closure.
these are my secrets.
Right.
My secrets.
These are for me.
So, in the end, Gary would admit to having sex with some of the bodies. This one is for 250 points and is just true or false. Would he admit to having sex with some of the bodies?
True.
Dang it. This is where strategy comes in, huh? I actually want to say it's false.
Yeah, because if you're behind, you got to go with your gut and try to close the gap.
I have a feeling like he was too proud to admit he had sex with the bodies.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not a pervert.
Yeah, that's where I drew the line.
I feel like he probably admitted it, and he probably used it. He was like, that's where I got the gonorrhea and the herpes. That's why I killed her.
So,
That goddamn Vietnam.
stretching his lead to 500, Geddy, because Gary Ridgway would admit to having sex with some of the bodies, with the caveat. Question number 12 immediately.
Whoa.
Nick, you can still tie this with nail. How many did he admit to sexually assaulting after they were dead? 500 points if you nail it, 250 points to the closest. You can only win it if you nail it, Nick. You can only tie it if you nail it, I guess. Actually.
4.
4
Wait, I
from
thought there was
Nick.
13.
That's my misnumber. I never renumbered. So question 13, how many did he admit to doing it with?
Oh, shit. The grindstone. So you're going with 4, Nick?
Yeah, I'm going with 4. I don't know.
I don't know. I'll stick with 7.
7. Geddy is going to get the 250 on this and nearly got the 500 because he admitted to having sex with 6 of the bodies after he had killed them. On December 18th, 2003, Ridgway was sentenced to 48 consecutive life sentences. And he is currently at the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla, Washington.
Really? Right now?
Right now.
Damn.
He's
What are
like
we
the
doing
second
right
or
now?
third killer that we've done that's in there.
In Walla Walla?
Mm-hmm.
Walla walla.
Yeah.
Bang bang.
So that's it, man. We're gonna after this, Greg and I are gonna put something together for the list of victims because it's huge, and I want to make sure we get them all out there. But that's the story, man. We were just recorded for 2.5 hours, which is like an hour longer than we normally record. So good to have you guys here.
Oh, it was great to be here.
Honor to be here, man.
Absolutely. So this is the time where I give you guys, if you'd like at all, anything you'd like to throw out there, any social medias, anything like that. The floor is yours.
You want to go, Nick?
I don't. I have a Facebook, but I'm the most boring person in social media ever.
Yeah.
Like I'll troll you, but I don't.
If you just want to get antagonized, follow him.
Yeah. If you want to get antagonized, friend me, Nick Drury, DRURY. Feel free. I don't ever post anything.
He'll antagonize any of you, though.
Exactly. Yeah. I
Fight
follow
me in
all
real
my
life.
friends, and yeah, I'm a troll. That's about all I got.
Perfect. Geddy?
Nothing for myself, but I got a couple shout outs. for my fiance Vicky for staying up this long with all these lights and me just randomly blurting out about having sex with corpses.
Yo, thanks, Vicky.
And then- like, come to
Although
bed.
not admitting to, just talking about.
Yeah, and the fish and the ground beef. That stuff with me. I also want to give a shout out to my brother-in-law who, for some reason, doesn't like the show. He doesn't learn enough. He doesn't learn enough. He's like, I've heard all that. I'm like, it's not about that.
We'll try to make season 3 more educational for your brother-in-law. We want him back.
Or I'm just going to start hitting him with subjects that he's heard nothing about. And then he'll be like, well, I can't help but learn now because I've never heard anything about
Snip,
this.
snap.
Wait, I gotta learn. And then, shout out to my sister. She's a big fan of you guys as well. She's hoping that someone will vote her on the show. And then, just one last one. My coworker who called this Books on Tape.
Yeah.
Because I told him I was going to be on, and he's like, "Oh, when are you going to be on that Books on Tape?" And I was like, "It's not Books on Tape, Darren."
Tell Darren to send me his books, and I'll read them all to him.
Yeah, I'm like, "Fuck you, Darren."
Future is now, old man.
Bet you can't even do a kickflip.
This is online. You can do this anytime you want.
Honestly, Steve,
Yeah,
you're
man.
just jealous because I have this sword signed from Corey from Slipknot. Oh,
Actually, Darren, I do listen to Slipknot. Oh,
so good.
I actually do have one shout out that I forgot to make.
Yeah, please do.
My buddy Cody just started listening. He's out there somewhere.
Howdy.
Yeah, he's out there. I got him into the show. He'll be stoked to hear his name on the podcast. Cody, thinking of you.
Hey, Cody, thanks for listening, bruh.
hey, Cody, go jump out of a
realize if you
plane,
feel
dude.
something on your back. It's not my fault. I don't have the robot pants.
Cody, man up and donate to the Patreon.
Do it.
Yeah, get
you
your
go.
name read on the show again, Cody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So thank you, Geddy. Thank you, Nick. Anything you want to throw out there at the end here, co-host Greg?
The huge at Hella Greg on all your favorite social media platforms except Snapchat.
Which is at Hella Greg backwards.
Huh? Yeah, it's Hella Greg backwards. It's Gurgla. It's you can find me on SoundCloud if you're into subpar computer music.
Well, they're into subpar podcasts, so they're halfway there.
Set your standards low and find soundcloud.com/HellaGreg.
Well, shit.
And merch in the store. Yo, my face is on a t-shirt.
Oh yeah, Greg's lifelong dream was to have his face on a t-shirt. So the Unigreg shirt is available at serialchillerspodcast.threadless.com along with a lot of other merch. We actually just got a new by the time this airs, they'll be out for a little while, but we just got a new shipment of stickers and buttons too. We're going to actually put those on the website to sell. So we'll have some of those up very soon too.
Get them.
Yeah, get them. It helps us, keep doing the damn thing. So thanks, guys, for hanging late night with us. Thanks again, Vicky, for letting Geddy stay up and keep you up. Thanks, Greg, for doing the damn thing, the Phoenix Lights. Thanks for the story, Geddy. Thanks for hanging out with me late night. And thank you, everybody, for listening to episode 55 of the Serial Chillers podcast. All right, that was episode 55 and Gary Ridgway in a nutshell. Gary Ridgway was tough, and not in the tough sense where there was no information out there and it's tough to find things and you have to really sleuth. There's tons of information and tons of conflicting information. So I really wanted to find what seemed to be the most succinct story and bring it to you guys. So I hope I did it justice, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you to Nick and Geddy for coming on. It was seriously a blast. I hope we can do it again sometime. Thank you again to co-host Greg for, of course, being on and helping edit and put together the show and get some of the music in as well. You guys can reach out to us in many ways. Facebook is Serial Chillers Podcast. The Instagram is at Serial Chillers Podcast. Twitter is at Chillers Podcast. The email is serialchillersPodcast@gmail.com. Call or text the show at 1-805-666-2513. You can get merchandise for the show from the show, serialchillerspodcast.threadless.com. Unigreg merchandise available now. Patreon.com/serialchillerspodcast is a way that you can help the show. You can give as little as $1 a month to the show, and it helps the wheels keep spinning. Thank you to everybody who has done that. Gary Ridgway, you guys. Shit. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, don't talk to strangers.
This has been another presentation from Super Network.